I can imagine those kind of discussions went on in the inner philosophy club of the after party, and not just on that one evening. It would have been standard. But of course, a lot of it's edited out of the conventional Gospels. So, I'm interested as a scholar in the history of Christianity, and which box? Well, we've got a lot of boxes for Christianity, all the blue ones. So that's from 33, 34, then a jump to 43, and all the way along to 58. This includes all the different branches and denominations of Christianity: Lutheran, Catholic, Methodist, Quaker, Anglican, which is the one I was baptized into, the Baptists, which my ancestors were since the 1600s, Presbyterian, which is the more Calvinist one, and the Catholics, of course. And then you've got other more esoteric ones, like Rosicrucians, which is a branch of Protestant mysticism. You've got the Gnostic and Nestorian, Syriac and Indian Christians, more in the East. You've got more recent ones, like the Unitarian Universalists, who don't believe in the Trinity. They're more like deists. They believe there's a God. And they probably wouldn't agree that Jesus Christ counts to go in the gospel, in the tarot of the gods. They'd say, no, he was just a man. And this was associated with Emerson and other humanist thinkers. However, I think the vast majority of Christians say that Christ was, and the terminology varies according to denomination, but either the Son of God or was one member of the Trinity. So you have the Father, the Absolute, the Unknowable. You have Jesus, the Son, and then you have the Holy Spirit. Most Christians subscribe to this Trinitarian idea, in which case I think Jesus qualifies in the tarot of the gods. And then you have other branches like Jehovah's Witnesses, the Mormons. This is 133 to 141. Rastafarians, which is the Ethiopian church, who alone have the Book of Enoch and other Gnostic writings in their Bible. I've given liberation theologians their own box because they're an influential branch of the Universal Church. And then more recently, there's even like shamanic and miscellaneous Christians. In America, for instance, a lot of people have reconciled shamanism with, of the Native American variety, with Christianity. So I've got books explaining Christ was a shaman, actually, because he was able to visit other worlds and heal. So it's very extensive. Which was the true Jesus? Well, let's go to box 54, where you have what I call philosophical Christianity. Smaller number. These are the people that study theology and detail and philosophy. I'd put in this box people like Leibniz and deep thinkers who've tried to understand Christianity and look at it from all angles, all perspectives. That's what the Jains called Anikantavada. They say there's not just one way of looking at reality. There's a variety of perspectives, and to get to the truth, you have to look at all the perspectives. So it's interesting. One of the favourite games that Christ used to play with his disciples was, who do you say I am? We know this from each of the Gospels, and also from the Gospel of Thomas. He plays this game, especially up at Caesarea Philippi, which is up near, it's now called Panias, in the north of the Jordan region. And it's where Mount Hermon waters flow into a cave dedicated to the god Pan, god of nature. Even in Jesus' time, it was dedicated to Pan. Now, it's interesting, he likes to go there to have this game with his disciples. And he says to them, go on, who am I then? And then they go around all the disciples. So Simon Peter answered, well, this is how Matthew gives it. Some say you're John the Baptist, others say Elijah, others say Jeremiah or one of the prophets. But what about you? Who do you say I am? Simon Peter said, well, you're the Christ, the Son of the living God. Blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, for this was not revealed to you by man, but by God, my Father in heaven. Then he warned his disciples not to tell anyone that he was the Christ. So that's the official version of the story. But in the Gospel of Thomas, a whole different version is given, which is the Gnostic version. In Logia 13, Jesus said to his disciples, "Make a comparison to me and tell me what I'm like." Simon Peter said, "Thou art a righteous angel." Matthew said to him, "Thou art like a wise man of understanding." Thomas said to him, "Master, Rabbi, my mouth is not at all capable of saying what thou art like." Jesus said, "I am not your master, because thou hast drunk from the bubbling spring which I have measured out." And he took him, he withdrew, he spoke 3 words to him. Now when Thomas came back to his companions, they asked him, "What did Jesus say to thee?" Thomas said to them, "If I tell you even one of the words he said to me, you will take up stones and throw them at me, and fire will come from the stones and burn you up." Yeah, that's a very different telling of this "who do you say I am" game. And I would argue that the point of the game was to realise that everyone's got a different perception of Christ. They're all partly right and partly wrong. Ultimately, the real answer is to find the living Christ within yourself, to go to the same source of consciousness, divine gnosis, that Christ had gone to. He was trying to get his disciples to see that by playing this game. And so I would say that, it's a tragedy we haven't got there yet. There are still, it's the biggest religion on the planet, 2 billion and more Christians on the planet. And yet, many of them are still fighting and arguing with each other. Imagine they're playing the "who do you say I am" game, and it's gone to fighting. I mean, Putin claims to be a Christian. The Ukrainians are mostly Christian, and they're fighting each other to the death. I would say that this is a job for philosophers. I mean, I've studied, this is why I love Hegel, because he tried to reconcile, he's in the Christian philosophical box. He tried to reconcile Christian thought with reason, with logic, as did Abelard before him, and Thomas Aquinas, and all the great intellectual thinkers of Christianity, as did Carl Jung. I think it's really important that we do that healing work, and we get at least the Christians to stop fighting each other. They need to sign a peace treaty, and that's why I served on the board of the Anglican Pacifist Fellowship for several years. It's the main peace organisation in the Anglican Church. And I've been to the Vatican, I've been to peace conferences there. Pax Christi is the equivalent in the Catholic faith. And the Quakers, Box 46, are probably the most committed to peace of all the Christian groups. I mean, they could host a conference for peace in London at Friend's house and invite Russian thinkers and Ukrainian, and we could sort this war, because it's not something that true Christians would countenance. It's barbarism. And the same with all the other wars. I was just renewing my look at the Treaty of the Peace of Westphalia in 1648, which ended the 30 Years' War in Europe. Horrible slaughter. And they invoked the Trinity to seal the peace. We don't know what the Trinity is. Only a fool would say they fully understand this mystery of God and man and Christ. But if we approach it with humility and prayer, maybe we could heal something. That's all I'm saying here. Okay, so there's that one. Let's do one more, because this is so exciting. It's a great game, isn't it?
Yeah.
I've got Page of Earth, yeah.
Okay. The Page of Earth. Yes, yeah, he's wearing a nice hat and he's having a banquet. And in the background you can see Noah's Ark, which is a bit of a giveaway. Yeah. page 218. So he was the god of wisdom for ancient Mesopotamia. He was called Enki in Sumerian, and in the later Akkadian was called Ea or Yah. Enki was known as the god of knowledge, Gestu, crafts, Gassam, and creation, Nuddimud. And he was one of the supreme gods, the Anunnaki, of Sumerian civilization. Now, some scholars say that he was called Yah or Ea by the Akkadians, who were Semitics, like the Hebrews, and some speculate that that is the origin of the name Yah, and became Yahweh in the Bible. So Ea or Yah may be one of the prehistorical antecedents to Yahweh. And it does fit in some respects. He was associated with the number 40 because in these Sumerian and Babylonian gods they all had a number because they were really into maths. This was the number 40. And Ea or Yah probably comes from the West Semitic root, Yah, meaning life, which is, they think, one of the roots of Yahweh, being or life. Enki's story is known because of the tablets that have come down from Babylonian culture. Scholars, archaeologists have dug up libraries with the stories. And it seems that it's Yah, or Ea, who saves mankind from the flood that is coming. Because Enlil, the storm god, is angry with mankind. Mankind is faithless, can't keep their word, doing stupid things, killing each other. So he's going to wipe them out with great storms and flood, Enlil. And Yah takes pity on mankind. He thinks there's potential in us. And so he singles out Utnapishtim, who's a sage, and he teaches him through the wall of his reed hut how to survive the great coming flood by building an ark. And all of humanity descends from that ark. Utnapishtim listens to Yah and saves us. Now this story was thousands of years old when the Hebrew people were taken to Babylon in exile. And what scholars believe is that the Hebrews, who hadn't got the complete Bible written down yet, they had stories orally of Moses and Abraham, and they had scraps of writing, but they hadn't put it all together into a Bible. They only did it in Babylon, inspired by the priests of these Babylonian deities who were very learned, and they borrowed the stories. They borrowed the Noah's flood story and put it into their backstory. Biblical studies scholars are still trying to work out, when exactly, but sometime around the 500s BC. And they called him Noah instead of Utnapishtim. It's a simpler word. But it's Ea who is, the hero god. So there's a lot more detail in the, the writing of the Tower of the Gods. But I think there were many temples for his worship, Ea and Enki, especially in Eridu. And he was famous for his sacred marriage with Ninhursag, who was like his consort. To these people, sexuality was a sacred thing. Marriage was celebrated with dancing, feasting, and it was a marriage of souls, not just physical bodies. And it took place in the sacred temple. And it's thought that the priest and priestess of Ea and Ninhursag would enact that, once a year in a full moon festival, when everybody celebrated sexuality officially. And that place has been discovered by archaeologists. I think it's amazing when I was little, I wanted to be an archaeologist because I read books about it and thought, wow, I want to go and dig it all up and find the truth. So that these temples are really important. And it also, this cult of Ea, extended throughout the whole Babylonia and Assyria. There are temples and shrines erected in his honour at Nippur, Girsu, Babylon, Sippar, and Nineveh. And his wife, Ninhursag, is also called Ki, or Damkina, the big lady of the waters. So, and then finally, Ea was found among West Semitic deities in Ebla, which is a town into Syria, further up the Euphrates River. This city of Ebla, they found, tablets, and it was excavated with a team from the University of Rome, La Sapienza, in the 1960s, and they found Ea. El, who was the name of the god of the Canaanites, and they find names that occur in the Bible, like Ishmael and Michael, in these Ebla tablets. And it looks like even Yahweh's there, Yah. So it's very probable, I think, that he comes partly from Ea. Okay, now where is he in the periodic table? Do you want to venture a choice?
It's up there, Sumerian, 30, let's put him.
Okay. He's in the Sumerian religion, yeah. And he's also in the Babylonian, which is 21. They have their own boxes because the Sumerian were the oldest. And, he was known in the Sumerian religion as Enki, and his quality of being the god of wisdom and all that was a Sumerian kind of thing. What happened was, and the Sumerian religion was the oldest, it had been going for 1,000 years, when the Semitic peoples appeared in the north of Iraq, in the form of the Akkadians, they founded the city of Babylon, and they became like the great power, the superpower, and they had a different language, a Semitic language, closer to Hebrew and Arabic, and they called him Yah, but they kept the designation of what he did, and they kept the same temples, and gradually Sumerian died out as a spoken language. It became a language of scholars and priests only, but everybody spoke Babylonian or Akkadian. But the real priests and scholars loved the Sumerian, ancient Sumerian, and they used to write that as well, using this cuneiform writing, which was wedge shapes put into clay, and those are the tablets we've got. So in the book that goes with the table, I've gone into the difference between the Sumerian and the Babylonian. There is an amazing project underway at the University of Chicago to write a complete dictionary of ancient Babylonian. It's in about 20 volumes. It's online, so I can look up the word for truth in ancient Babylonian, and it will give me that. And I put it in my philosophical dictionary of different languages. Sumerian is also translated, but not quite so thoroughly. There are fewer Sumerian texts, and it's still not been deciphered as to where it comes from. It's a mysterious language. It's not connected to Semitic or Indo-European or any other language family. So it's one of those, if anyone listening wants to become a scholar, please study linguistics and work out the origins of Sumerian, because you'd be doing humanity a favour. It's just one of those things. It's a bit like Etruscan. That also has not been, its origin is not known. So it's in those two boxes, 30 and 21, and they're absolutely fascinating. I reckon for Babylonians there's about 1,000 people that worship that religion nowadays. I've met people who swear by the Babylonian gods. They have little temples in their house. They do rituals to Marduk, who was the other great, he was the king of the gods of Babylon. And they love the goddesses of ancient Babylon. Babylon gets a bad name in the biblical text because is associated with debauchery and, you know, all that stuff. But actually the Babylonians thought sex was sacred, so why shouldn't they celebrate it? And modern day Babylonian initiates tend to be pagans who take the same view. The same with Sumerians. Again, I've estimated a very small number, 2,000, but mainly this would include all the scholars that study these languages. I mean, there are people at the British Museum who just think Sumerian, and there are people like Noah Kramer, who was one of the greatest Sumerian scholars, who've written stuff about their religion. So there's specialists at Oxford University as well, where I used to teach. There are great Sumerian and Babylonian experts. And then there are the odd eccentric who keep those religions alive in their homes. And there are, no doubt in California, there'll be some Babylonian temples up and running. Maybe in Siberia too. Okay, so those are those ones. Okay, any final questions before we end? We've covered 4 gods. We've done Horus, Manannan Maclear, Jesus Christ, and Ea. Any final questions about anything we've covered tonight?
No, I don't.
Now's the time. Okay.
No,
No? Okay.
quite clear.
Right. Thank you so much. Well, thanks for listening.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
see you again hopefully next week.